Hello and welcome to today's webinar, CRISC Roadmap, How to Earn the Highest Paying IT Certification. I'm Kristen Zurovich and I'll be your moderator for the webcast. But before we get started, I'd like to share just a couple housekeeping items with you. First of all attendees are in listen-only mode, which means you are muted. However, you can submit a question at any time during the webinar by simply using the questions pane in that control panel for the webinar. I'll queue all of these up and then I'll share them with our guest at the end of the webinar, and we will do our best at that time to answer as many questions as time permits. With that, I'd like to introduce today's featured speaker, Leighton Johnson. Leighton is the founder and chief technology officer at ISFMT, which is a provider of computer security, forensics consulting, and certification training. He holds CRISC, CISM, CISA, and CISSP certifications, among several others, and has taught courses for each of these certifications, as well as Security Plus, Digital and Network Forensics, Anti-Terrorism, Cyber Warfare, and Risk Management worldwide for the past 12 years. At Augusta University, he taught digital and network forensic courses and has conducted incident response and digital forensics investigations for both public and private clients for the past 20 years. Welcome to the webinar, Leighton.
Thank you very much. So this morning we're going to be talking about CRISC. We're going to be talking about risk management, risk assessments, and the ideas of what is the CRISC about and how it can further your activities in the computer security, cybersecurity, and activities around risk management for each of those types of areas. So today we're going to be talking about what are the career opportunities, some of the benefits of the certification, some of the tips around the CRISC examination, and then we'll be talking about InfoSec's bootcamp overview, and then Jared will complete the discussion as we talk about that at the end of the webinar. So in today's best areas we see around cybersecurity, we find that the overview of understanding risk is paramount to working with all the different parts of the cyber community, the computer security community, and all the other areas that fit into those processes. So CRISC is being certified in risk and information systems control. It is governed and delivered by ISACA, which is the International IT Audit Organization, originally founded back in 1969. Now, it used to stand for something, now they just call it ISACA. There have been 20,000 plus professionals certified in CRISC since it was introduced in 2010. And more than 96% of those have maintained their certification as it rolls through its processes of keeping it up to date and what it's all about. So CRISC itself forms a foundation among the varying different activities within the organizations around what is risk, how is it done, so IT professionals, risk professionals, security control professionals, business analysts, systems analysts, project managers, and compliance professionals in all of these arenas find use in understanding what is a basic foundational understanding of how to deal with risk, what is risk first, and then how to deal with risk as we begin to walk our way through it in its understanding. It is one of the highest ranked certifications as far as being paid. It is found to be of great value in a multitude of areas throughout both public and private organizations around the world. One of the biggest things to understand is what is a risk professional. So a CRISC by design is around being a professional in the risk arena, focused primarily on IT security risk, but not exclusively. It deals with looking at, identifying, assessing, and evaluating those 85% of the risks that an organization face that are IT based for the activities, and looking at them, identifying them, looking at what are the probabilities that they could happen, and if we do have some high possibilities, that some of these things that happen, you know, a website gets hacked or somebody goes to steal data from our particular organization. We help develop the mitigation plans around protecting those organizations from those both internal and external threats that would cause those risks to be realized. And in doing that, we assist the wide array of control proponents within each organization, the security professionals who are responsible for the varying different kinds of controls, the technology-based controls, things like firewalls and IDS components, the operational controls, dealing with people and their passwords, and then we monitor those things and we maintain those controls for each and every person as they begin to walk through and understand what are the things that go with this. And then we also report it on up the chain to the senior management so they can make those risk-based decisions that are almost inevitably around what's the business doing and how much is it going to cost, and those types of things that walk through the processes that we see today. So the benefits that we have out there around CRISC certification and what can happen with it and do it, clearly, of course, one of the biggest ones is that you now set yourself up to be hired, to be very in great demand. You get extra skills that go along with that, which include identifying the varying different kinds of risks that are out there. There are as many ways in as there are possible ways to look at something, and each one of those has some level of risk associated with it. Ensuring that you stay current to what's happening in today's world and all the different activities. Our threat environments are constantly changing every day. We hear new areas of concern. We hear new activities of concern. We've had a great deal of these changes just within the last 30 days or so, where now we have hardware risks based upon computer chip architecture issues. That's now been added to this whole pot of the ways that risk can come through. So we help stay relevant there. We look at the ideas around those. Of course, it gives you a good handle on, and one of the things that we will talk about throughout the course and looking at it is identifying those risks and then being able to evaluate them so that you can build a mitigation plan and then assisting and putting it in. So it helps with personal growth. And clearly it helps you earn more. As I said, it's one of the highest paying certifications in the IT industry today, better than $120,000 per year as a standard across the board from the organizations that do the evaluations that we've seen that have occurred and those activities. So why would you want to be a CRISC person? Well, it helps you gain deeper understanding of what are the business risks that are out there. Understanding that they're always tied back to the business. What's going on? What does the organization do? If it's a for-profit company, how does it make money? If it's a not-for-profit organization that you're working with, how do they provide their service? Those types of things gives you then and shows you as value to your employer that you understand those risks and how they can be managed, how they can be worked with, how do the IT security controls work, and then gives you a competitive advantage over your competitors who don't have those types of things as part of those processes, and it helps you earn more. As it says right now in our mechanisms, the Global Knowledge Report pay scale mechanisms show that the average CRISC salary is in between the audit manager and the security manager levels, around $127,000 a year on average, working its way up. So we can see that this is a high value area, a high important area, works with each of these arenas around those activities. So CRISC itself. CRISC itself requires a couple of different things in order to be able to sit for the examination. Number one, requires 3 years of minimum work experience in at least 2 of the 4 domains. Those 4 domains are IT risk identification, IT risk assessment, risk responses and controls, and then risk and control monitoring and reporting. And of those 2 required domain mechanisms, at least 1 year of experience either has to be in identification or assessment of risk mechanisms. And looking at those, there's no extra mechanisms in place to waiver it or any of those things. The level is expecting you to be a risk professional with 3 years of experience in this understanding. So that type of thing works with it. Looking at risk identification. Now, of course, risk identification is very wide. It's varied in its coverage. It deals with a great deal with things like documentation mechanisms. What's the threats? What's the vulnerabilities that are out there? What type of mechanisms are available to you? Understanding what's a risk scenario, what's the what ifs that are out there, and then working with those actions and activities, building them into a tracking mechanism that the organization usually utilizes. Now, depending on which industry you're in, they call it different things. That tracking mechanism in many commercial industries is called a risk register. The same tracking mechanism when you work into the public side of the house is called a POAM register, but those are the same things. And then shows and understands and works with and identifies what's the risk appetite of the organization. What are they willing to tolerate? Those types of things. And so those are the kinds of things that we look at as we begin to walk through the mechanisms around what's as part of these activities. So again, the 4 domains are IT risk identification, IT risk assessment, risk response and mitigations, and risk and control monitoring and reporting. Surprisingly enough, ISACA puts together the construct around how big and how often do you have to deal with these activities and understanding the mechanisms with percentages in each of these domains. So in IT risk identification, that's 27% of the areas you need to focus on. Risk assessment is considered to be the most important. It takes that information out of the identification arena and puts it into the assessment, where we begin to walk through and identifying and looking at how likely could that happen. If it did happen, what could be an issue, those types of things in the risk assessment area. Then once we have that, then we develop what are the standardized risk response mechanisms that are available to us. How are you going to treat it? How are you going to look at the risk? What's a risk transfer? How do you work through mitigation mechanisms, etc.? That's 23%. And then the final area is then you have to tell everybody, you monitor it, and then you got to tell everybody. So that's the control monitoring and reporting area in its understanding. Now, the way ISACA presents this mechanism, they allow their testing activities for CRISC to occur in 3 timed windows per year as part of their processes. It's available online through an organization, testing organization called PSI, and you sign up through and have InfoSec sign you up through the ISACA activity, and then the test examination process windows for taking those tests will be timed. You'll get scheduled. The 3 test windows this year are February 1st through May 24th, June 1st through September 23rd, and then October 1st through January 24th next year. It is a computer-based examination process. It'll be done on your laptop. The test itself is 150 multiple choice questions, and you have a 4-hour window in order to test those areas. So you take 150, multiply it by 27%, and you know how many questions are going to be in the first domain. You take the 150 times 28%, you know how many questions will be in the second domain, that kind of stuff. Now, they are mixed and matched. They're not standard as you go through it. So you do have to shift between domains as you go through the test. Now, the test itself is scored on a common scale of 2 to 800. The maximum number, if you got every question right, would be 800. So obviously the questions are weighted. And of course, that is ISACA's close-hold secret, is what each question's weighting is. That's how they maintain their management mechanism. And in order to pass, you got to get a 450 or better out of that on that 2 to 800 scale, that 200 to 800 scale, in its understanding and where it's at and what it's looking for and the processes that go along with it. Now, as we begin to walk through this process, one of the things that you'll find out is there is a very strong area of understanding you need to have that's unique to understanding how risk works in the information systems arena, the IT arena, the security arena, the audit arena, all of these areas, and looking at their mechanisms and seeing how that activity is required. One of the best things I can recommend for you to do as you prepare for a CRISC exam itself, if you're going to take it in one of those 3 windows, which I hope you will, is to build yourself a study plan first. Look at the kinds of mechanisms that are available. Get copies of the official ISACA resources from the ISACA, either through InfoSec Institute, if you plan on doing it through this, or in general, just from the ISACA activities. Download that candidate information guide. That's the first thing you need to do. It will give you the basic structure of the kinds of areas you need to look at for each of those 4 domains that are covered in CRISC. Then, as you begin to look at those areas and begin to look at what parts you have a good understanding on, which parts you think you need to work with, get a copy of the review manual for the CRISC, which is a detailed discussion, student study manual, which walks through each of the particulars for each of the tasks involved and looking at what's required for CRISC and looking at those mechanisms in each area. And as you begin to walk through it, that review manual will point out the different types of things that you need to know. Then the third thing I would do is to work with the QA&E manual that ISACA has put out, which is review questions, answers, and the explanations for those answers that they have produced as part of this process for CRISC. We are on the 6th version of this CRISC review manual, and this has now been out 8 years. So as you can see, they try to keep it really relatively current. They update it about once every 18 months or so, and they keep that review manual and then the attendant QA&E for questions, answers, and explanations that go along right with it. There are a number of online communities available on Reddit and tech exam areas and other places. YouTube has a lot of videos to help the people have walked through CRISC. These are all areas that I would recommend that you supplement your learning with, that you can do as well. Of course, enroll in a CRISC prep course as part of its process. These are typically 3 days long, where they talk about the 4 domains and they go through each of these areas of tasks that are necessary to understand each particular domain in its understanding as well. As an example, the mechanisms around the first area include for IT risk management, IT risk identification, include the universe of risk. What does it do with risk management? How does that tie to an enterprise risk organizational activity? How do you look at do identifications? What's a threat assessment? What's a vulnerability assessment? Building online or building scenarios for risk, all sorts of different things that go along with that particular domain. The second one they'll talk about when they're giving you this prep, they'll talk about what is a risk assessment? How do you build a risk assessment? How do you adjust it for what your organization has? What are the potential likelihoods and impacts of risks and those types of things? Walking through the current states of your controls that you have out there. Understanding appropriately the results of the outputs of the risk assessment. The third domain being the risk response, looking at the 4 ways of working with risks and evaluating their efficiencies, their effectiveness in managing risk, and ensuring that that's aligned with the business objectives as well. And then there's the 4th domain, which is the risk and control monitoring, where you're looking at the key risk indicators and understanding where they are and how they tie into the key performance indicators for the organization, and looking at your overall risk profile. Take some sample exams, practice exams. I know most boot camp, especially the CRISC prep course that InfoSec produces, has sample exam questions for each of the areas to give you an idea of the kinds of ways that the mechanisms are done and those processes. So you'll get those core concepts as we were talking about for risk identification, risk assessment, risk response, and risk and control, how to design, how to implement, how to monitor those mechanisms in place, and then what are the regulatory environments that we are operating in these days that have a great deal of information around and guidance for dealing with risks. Anything and everything from a publicly traded company having to report risk under their Sarbanes-Oxley required reporting, to financial reporting of risks through GLBA, to governmental reporting under FISMA, et cetera, with the new advent of all the data protection requirements coming out of Europe under GDPR that goes into effect in May. We see even more coming from that side as well as what we see. Now, these boot camp mechanisms offer you classroom training. Now, InfoSec's mechanism is award-winning courseware as developed by the processors and the experts with instruction. You get to see risk as part of the exam voucher itself, as part of your enrollment. You will get a copy of the manual. You get a copy of the QA&E manual. You'll also get expert mentoring from myself or other CRISCs that have been teaching this for you, and they will allow you to either resit in an in-person or live online activity of this mechanism. Either way, for 1 year, if you manage not to pass the test the first time, you can certainly have the ability to resit. And for further explanations of all of that, we're going to go over to Jared as we begin to walk through these processes.
Sure. And before we transition to Jared, I just want to let you know, Leighton, that we're getting some good questions coming in. I'm in the process right now of queuing those up and getting those ready for you at the end of the webinar. And while I do that, I'll quickly introduce Jared. He is our InfoSec Institute sales manager, and he'll just share a minute or two about what you can expect from the CRISC Bootcamp that we offer, plus a special offer for all of today's viewers. And we'll circle back after Jared with some questions for you, Leighton.
Okay.
All right, thanks for all the information, Leighton, and thank you for the introduction, Kristen. I want to thank everybody who is in attendance. I appreciate you taking the time to sit through the webinar. So I just wanted to get into very, very briefly, you know, what kind of our boot camps look like, what kind of information you're going to learn, and what that looks like for you, right? So lots of students have taken courses with us. We've trained over 60,000 students in various certifications. We offer over 63 training courses. When we get specifically into the CRISC training, You know, we've been rated 5 out of 5 stars by over 70 students. I know that number has grown a lot. And we have the highest exam pass rate. Just a little over 94% of our students will pass on their first attempt. That doesn't mean that you're left out in the dry. If you don't pass, you've got the ability to resit any one of our trainings as many times as you'd like for up to a year. All of our classes are taught by CRISC certified instructors. We do ask that all of our instructors have a minimum of 10 years of experience in their given field, because not, you know, a lot of these courses can tend to be dry. So what we want is instructors who've got, you know, anecdotes. They've got real life examples of how they've used some of the knowledge in the past, and I think that that actually leads to our 94% pass rate. We do have expert mentoring included with every class, and I'll get into, you know, kind of our self-paced offering. We do still make sure that you've got contact with an expert instructor, because everybody kind of runs into, you know, issues from time to time. We do have exam practice sessions every night. So one thing that's unique about InfoSec Institute, and I know some of our competitors do charge for these evening sessions, but basically, you know, you've learned things throughout the day. It's been a long day. You've learned a lot. Sometimes there are things that you have questions about, and we understand that. So what we do is we ask our instructors to stick around in the evening just to kind of sit with the students, get some one-on-one time. Not only do you get to know the instructor a little bit better, but also you can kind of clear things up. You know, any questions that you had throughout the day that weren't quite sticking or didn't make sense, and you just want a little bit of elaboration, that's what we have them stick around for, and we don't charge you extra for that. We do have flexible course formats, and on the next slide, we're going to get into the different ways that we offer the courses and how we offer the training. So Leighton, if you want to move to the next slide, that'd be great. All right, so we do offer in-person boot camps. We know that, you know, a lot of folks want that kind of in-person training. They want to be able to shake the hand with the instructor. They want to do some networking in class. We offer in-person boot camps in 12 locations around the United States. We do hold the training year-round. Obviously, we do cater to those testing windows, but now that ISACA switched to that computer-based testing, it's made things a lot simpler for people. We also offer live online boot camps, and really what these are designed for are for folks who want that in-person experience, but don't necessarily want the costs associated with travel. You know, sometimes it can be inconvenient to try and get away, and you got to stay in a hotel. You can't take, you know, somebody's got to take care of the kids, the dog, you know, all this stuff. So we do offer the live online, and what that is you're remotely participating in one of our live boot camp trainings. So one of those 12 locations, you're just remoting in to that location. We ask that you have a headset with a microphone, so that way you can speak with the instructor. But all the courseware, all the materials, all of that is the exact same. We also include an exam pass guarantee with our live online classes. So if for some reason you have a bad testing day, or, you know, maybe the live online just didn't work out for you, not only will we allow you to resit the class either in person or live online the second time, but we will also provide you with a second attempt at the exam. So that's really kind of the claim to fame for the live online boot camps, and really I think it's our highest value offering. We also offer the mentored online courses, and really this was kind of the genesis of, we understand that people have to work, and a lot of times their employers won't let them take off of work. So, you know, mentored online is really designed for people who can't take the time away. What we do is we give you access to a previously recorded instructor-led training that for 24 hours a day for 4 months, all the same courseware and material that you would get at one of our live courses, and we also give you access to a live instructor. So that way, if you run into a roadblock, or you just need somebody to keep you on task, you've got that ability to reach out to someone. The other option is, you know, if you've got a large organization and you guys are either, you know, you're looking to get involved in a large project and everyone needs to be CRISC certified, or you just have 10 or more people that need to get training, we can actually send an instructor on site. We bring all of the materials, all of the necessary, you know, computers, everything directly to you, and we do that at a greatly discounted rate. So I'd highly recommend speaking with a training advisor, you know, just to see if, you know, if you've got a big group of people, that might be your best option, and it'll make you look good because you're going to save your company a lot of money in doing so. And then, so for the people who've been involved in this webinar, we're running a special right now, and I want to kind of clue you in on this, and this will be on the next slide. basically, if you enroll in a CRISC bootcamp by 228, you get a mentored online course of equal or lesser value for free. So, you know, for a lot of folks, you'd be able to get your CRISC, and then not only, you know, it's not only is it important to get another course because you're learning more, you're getting, you know, for example, you could get CRISC with CISM, right? Not only are you learning the extra skills, but you're also getting those continuing education credits. It keeps you from having to go back and purchase another course later on down the road at a significant cost. It's saving you a lot of money. So this is a really great deal, and I'd highly recommend, you know, just looking into it or speaking with one of our advisors. But that was it. I just wanted to give everyone a brief overview of what they can expect if they do take a training with InfoSec Institute. I think now we're going to move on to Q&A, and for that, I will go to Kristen and Leighton. I appreciate you taking the time to listen.
Great. Thanks so much, Jared. Thanks for all the details, and especially the great offer that's available for the next week. Leighton, like I mentioned, we have some good questions that have been queued up. I'd like to start with one that came in from someone who says, I have a good networking background, but I'm new to security. Do you think CRISC is the right certification to start with to enter the security world? What are your thoughts on that? And Leighton, you might be muted. Leighton, are you still on the line? I see you connected, but I see that your microphone is muted.
There we are. Okay. We both muted me. So, all right. You have a networking background and you want to know if CRISC is a good place to start. Absolutely, because there's so many risks that are coming in from the network side of the house. So that certainly it gives you a leg up on doing the risk identification. So I would absolutely say that's a very good place to start from, to understanding everything that goes along with CRISC.
Very good. I have another question here from Kevin. He asks about the 4 different exams in the CRISC exam, or the 4 different domains in the CRISC exam. He's wondering, where, in your experience, have you seen students having the most difficulty, and do you have any recommendations on how someone might prepare for that?
Well, 2. Typically, risk identification, which is domain 1, is usually the one that causes most people to have the biggest areas of concern because they want to make sure they got everything covered. And since risk identification expands out and works in alignment with the enterprise risk strategy of the organization, it's virtually wide open as to what could cause a risk. So the risk identification mechanisms are often part of that. So we work through understanding how do you build a risk scenario, the what if scenarios that assist with that risk identification. The second one is the one that is the strongest and the one that's the 28%, which is risk assessment. Everybody has their own way of looking at assessments. We have qualitative methodologies, we have quantitative methodologies, we got hot charts, we got all sorts of different ways depending upon which industry you're in on how you do a risk assessment. So the idea behind that one then is you're given an idea of the process, and that way you begin to understand from a core foundation mechanism on how to do risk assessments in your organization. But that typically is the second area that people have the hardest time with.
Okay. A question here from Chelsea. She's wondering that with ISACA's shift now to computer-based testing for the CRISC exam, has anything actually changed with the exam?
No.
Okay.
Straight up, no, it hasn't.
Very good. 2 questions here from Eric. The first one is, can I take the exam twice within the same exam window?
No, you can only do 1 per exam window, but since the windows are so close, like one ends at May and the next one begins in June, you can, do that. But no, each window only allows you to test once.
Got it. Very good. His other question then as a follow-up was, can CPE credits from the same activity be applied to multiple ISACA certifications?
Absolutely, I do that all the time. I have all of the I certifications, so yes. As an example, if I get CPEs because I'm talking at a convention or a conference, I do it across the board on all of them. They get rated different, so you'll get different amounts for each, but you can take the same event that gives you CPEs and then apply it across the board.
Very good. Looks like that is the end of our time today. There are a couple other questions we will not have time for today. Ryan, I see one of your questions is in the queue, and I've messaged you. We will certainly have Jared or someone from his team respond directly back to you. Leighton, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing your insights on the CRISC, on the exam, how to prepare. Appreciate that. Thanks to Jared as well. And I hope everyone has found this useful. We'd appreciate if you took the survey at the end of the webcast and share your thoughts on the content of this webcast with us. And I look forward to potentially seeing you online at another webcast. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.